and he was in maybe too in love with the idea of dying heroically and so forth. And he actually took the general of their army hostage. Him and his friends. He had a bunch of his kind of followers and fans and stuff. Where they formed a paramilitary organization, and they took his, this general, their Japanese defense force. They stormed their office with samurai swords. They didn't have guns, just samurai swords. They held off all these other guys, and then he went out on a balcony and gave a speech to all the soldiers about how they should, bring Japan's greatness back and so forth. And then he went inside and cut his stomach open like samurai style, and then had somebody cut his head off. Said he was like one of the last people who ever did that. Like,
What is up, YouTube? Charles here, and I'm back with another interview. For today, I have Mr. Jack Donovan on my podcast, who is one of my favorite authors, and he mostly talks about masculinity, how you can tap into your true masculinity and basically then give your gift to the world as a man. This can be whatever you want, but just how to tap into masculinity and become a healthy man, mentally and also physically, because perhaps you know the term toxic masculinity, and that's not what the society needs. Society needs men that are on their purpose and that basically give their gift to the world, and also women that give their gift. So this is also a topic for another video. Perhaps I will also cover the women out there, because I believe it's pretty hard in today's society, to like know your way, because you have so many different opinions. So in this video, we focus on the masculine side, and for me it was super insightful. Also, funny enough, the interview starts in the middle, or better to say, the podcast starts in the middle of the interview, because I had not enough space on my laptop. So I was like in the middle of the interview, and my laptop basically told me the recording stopped. So the worst case scenario happened, because sometimes when I interview my favorite authors or people that I admire, I try a little bit too hard to be cool, to keep my composure. And then basically the worst case happened, and he saw it, and it was a little bit awkward. So then, funny enough, the second half of the interview, the second half that you will see, because I lost the first part, is actually so good, because I just relaxed and I was, okay, dude, like, you lost your cool face in front of him, so just chill, relax, and just have a chat. And the interview turned out so good. So I'm super happy to share that with you guys. If you want to see more about Mr. Jack Donovan, check out the links in the description below. All his books are there. Great guy, great mindset. And without any further ado, let's dive into the interview.
And we are back. I had to clean my laptop. I had no space left. So also, I talked about actually the idea that when I was younger, I had this idea from society that, this one day in the future, when I have my secure job, my secure life, I can just sit back and relax, and I can be like myself and basically lazy, don't need to challenge myself anymore. And I feel like it's part of social conditioning these days.
well, I mean, that's think of the idea of retirement. That's very new. I mean, people didn't retire back in the days. The idea that someday you're going to work until a certain age, and then you get to stop working and be on vacation until you die, is very new in society, and it really only lasted for a few decades. Because now that's probably going to go away. At least in America, that people are going to not retire, as they get older.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea that you can just rest on your laurels and sit around, it's at that point, are you even living? If you aren't challenging yourself in some way, now maybe you don't have to do the same things, but if you aren't challenging yourself in some way, if you aren't trying to learn something new, I mean, I'm trying to play with music production. That's been my project all week, just to see if I can do something with music maybe down the line. You have to keep giving yourself new projects and keep giving yourself new challenges and new things to do in life always.
Yeah.
And that's the way you should look at everything.
Yeah. That's a pretty interesting concept, because as I told you before, this year I quit my job and I went to the unknown. I decided to travel, to go to Asia, to travel in Europe. And I realized, man, like, because I was living on my edge on a daily basis, I had to come up with ways to make money while traveling. I had to like work on my business. But because I was doing that, man, there was a look in my eyes, like I was really alive. I was like living on my edge. I really felt so hardcore I was so hardcore in my masculine energy. Like I said, told you before, till the age of 25, I was living more in my masculine and my feminine energy. It sounds weird because I looked like a guy, you know, I
Sure.
was into dating, like I did everything like guys do nowadays. But I was not really having the same feeling that I have right now. You know, I was always looking for a way to think, like I was waiting for people to tell me what to do, how I should live my life. But the moment I told myself, man, now you're going to decide for yourself. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was a man. It was kind of weird, but fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'd say the most important thing for young guys or all the guys out there would be like to be on their path, on their purpose, like to challenge themselves on a daily basis. What would be like the most important thing in your eyes?
Yeah. 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 And also to make sure that you're spending enough time around other men, I think is really important. Because especially in the modern world, I mean, if you think back in the days, you'd have, men would spend a lot of time with other men just because men did certain kinds of work and women did other kinds of work. But now, workplaces and schools and everything are all very integrated. So a lot of guys, especially younger guys, I think grow up without having really a lot of experience dealing with other men. And the problem with that is then they get girlfriends or wives and they don't have their own identity.
Mm.
Then they become part of a couple, and they get joint Facebook profiles and they have the same. They no longer are anything by themselves. And I think with the thing is, you have to go out and be challenged, not just challenge yourself as putting yourself in awkward situations and so forth, but be challenged by other men, because you can think that you're a lot better than you are if you just stay at home.
Mm.
I mean, that's everybody's a tough guy on his keyboard, right? Like everybody's it's you really need to go out and interact with other men and realize that's a little bit of a harder challenge, because sometimes it's a little easier with women, if you're very polite and nice and they'll be nice to you and whatever, and then they're not going to challenge you in the same way. Yeah, they'll challenge you in a different way, but they're not going to challenge you in the same way. And I think that men need to figure out who they are within groups of men, and that's actually one of the major theses of the Way of Men, is that we know who we are because of who we are in the context of a group of men. And until you have men in your life who can judge you and so forth, and people to be accountable to, that, because that's a huge thing. And that's something I'm always looking for, especially as I get better at things in life. It's harder to find people to be accountable to because you're better than other people, the people you were hanging out with before. So you leveled up, and so you have to find new people. It's pretty cliche self-improvement advice, but to be the dumbest guy in the room or the weakest guy in the room is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to be around people that are better than you. You want to be around men who are winners, and to learn from them. And that's something that you always have to keep seeking out. Not just be stagnant and hang out with people who are going to tell you that you're wonderful all the time, because that you're not going to get any better that way.
Yeah. The problem is in our society right now, it's actually pretty convenient to not have other men around you that challenge you. Most guys are just like yes men these days.
Yeah, and it's hard to find anyone to challenge you. I mean, really, it is to in adult life to find male friends, who are actually winners, and they're trying to do something impressive as well with their lives, and who are actually going to say, "What are you doing, man? What are you doing all your time?
Yeah.
Why are you so lazy?" I would love someone to be like, "What are you doing in your office all day?" You could have written 3 books by now. That kind of thing. I think that we all need people like that in our lives, and I think it's good advice to seek that out.
Yeah. What would be your opinion? How would you seek out guys like that?
It is harder depending on where you live. I actually live in a really small town, so I'm kind of limited to who's around me right now personally. But I think, especially in bigger cities, like right now, I'm searching for, like I said, jiu-jitsu gyms or like any kind of gym environment, because you want to be around men who are challenging themselves, right?
Yeah.
So go to a place where men are challenging themselves. That's
Yeah.
and where there's some kind of social interaction. Because unfortunately, most regular gyms, you don't really talk to anybody. You just have your headphones on and then you work out. So you don't talk to anybody, so you don't really get that. But if you get things where you're actually having to interact with other men, you can kind of build friendships with them in that way. Yeah. And everybody makes fun of the internet and says how it's a horrible thing and so forth. But most of my friends I know from the internet. I mean,
Yeah, same.
The reality of it, like you find guys who have similar interests to you, and then you try to meet in person. If you never try to meet in person, it's kind of lame. Like you're not really having a real friendship, and you don't really know them. Because I am so witty online, man. But it's you're not quite the same person in real life, and so you can seek out people that have similar interests with you. And then meet them in real life, because that's where it really matters.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. I also wanted to talk to you about a specific concept, because I felt like as soon as I tapped into my masculine core, into my manhood, especially this year, I realized that a type of feeling was emerging. Like I became way more grounded. Like I acquired the knowledge of, regardless of what happens, I will find a way, and I will be fine. And I didn't have that before, It's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, I mean, and you only get that from confidence, right? I mean, that's what confidence is. I mean, you get it from putting yourself in a situation, handling it, and then moving on to the next situation. And the more times you handle problems, the less panicked you're going to be when problems occur.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm also really into, I guess Carl Jung, right? If you know. Yeah. I'm into like shadow work right now. I like the idea of the human shadow. And I also realized the more I'm looking at my own shadow, it kind of correlates with masculinity in some way, I feel like.
I guess so. I kind of am personally having an argument with Jung in my mind that started this summer. I actually gave a speech in the 21 conference, and I kind of took a dump on Jung. But because his whole idea of like there's this masculine, feminine energy in each of us and so forth, I think that maybe that's led men maybe down an unproductive path, because then they're looking for the feminine in themselves. And I think in modern society, we are surrounded by feminine energy. We don't need to find it. It's there. It's on the outside.
Exactly.
We don't need to look inside for it. It's there. Men need to get in touch with their masculine side and just not let it go.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's so as far as the shadow, I mean, what do you mean? I'd be interested to see what you mean by that, as far as the shadow and the masculine and so forth.
Yeah, for example, when I was traveling, I realized to not to survive, but to get by, I need to like be a little bit more witty, a little bit more influenceable, like not manipulative, but influenceable. And then I realized at the same moment, I realized I could use this for something bad, And I had this thought of using it for something bad, not to steal, but to perhaps like get.
Yeah.
Yes, go on.
Yeah. No, exactly what you were saying. Okay, I can see what you're saying there. And I've had the same thing happen. Because I know some guy was teaching me to train my dogs the other day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that I was being a baby with my dogs. I've written this book about masculinity and dominance and so forth, but my dogs are like my little friends, and so I was being too nice to them.
Yeah.
And so he's just saying, basics dominant stuff that I already know because I've been writing about it for years, but I just wasn't doing it with my dog. And then you sit and think about that for a minute, and I'm like, well, level 1 is doing this with dogs. Level 2 is probably doing it with women, because there's the same thing. You're setting boundaries. You're saying no. You're like, I'll do this. We're going to do this now. You're being a leader, and so forth. All these things, and then level 3 is to do it with other men, and they'll be like, no, we're doing this. And then you lead them in the same way, because we're all kind of animals, and we interact in that way. But as you realize that you can do that, then you're like, I could easily do this in a bad way.
Yeah,
I could easily do this in a sociopathic way. And especially me. I mean, I'm an author. I'm an author. People come to me for advice. There's a lot of guys who will just like make a whole bunch of dudes, pay them a whole lot of money and not give them anything for it, really. And just be like, just kind of take advantage of them.
Yeah.
And I've always been really not about doing that, but it's there.
Yep.
Like it's always there. Like I could do that, but that's just not that's not my character to do it. But, it's definitely the temptation is always there. You're like, well, this guy's has no idea what he's talking about. He just coming for me for advice. I could probably just charge him $1,000 and give it to him.
Yeah.
And it isn't even really that wrong. People do it all the time, but you just have to, I think integrity is important. In the book, The Way of Men, one of the biggest points that I make is that there's a difference between being good at being a man and being a good man.
Yeah.
Right. And, masculinity is amoral. We strength, courage, and mastery and honor are kind of immoral. Like prison gangs have all those qualities.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't have to be a good guy. But I've learned, especially, as I go in life, I'd like to be surrounded by good men as well. I don't want to be surrounded by sociopaths and fucking scumbags and so forth.
Yeah.
I want to be surrounded by good men.
Yeah.
And I try to, and if you want to be surrounded by that, you kind of also have to be one. So you have to set limits and figure out where your lines are as far as personal integrity and so forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to understand what your shadow wants. I mean, my shadow would get me in all kinds of trouble. I'd probably be doing coke on some boat right now, but but I'm not doing that because that's not really productive for me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, beautiful. I like it. I also like how you talk about tribes in your books, because you also just mentioned the sociopaths, and I feel like they still had their purpose back in the days. You don't want to send like the nice guy to the other tribe to kill them. Like for example, me, I do a lot of personality tests. I realized I'm over average, like agreeable, and I have like a lot of social skills, but I'm not like the sociopathic guy. So you don't want to send me. I will be like, let's help the other guys. Let's talk it out. You kind of
yeah. I'm
so
probably the same way.
Other guy.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely has a use, and that's that gets into deep things. But you wonder who has really always been in charge. Has it always been the sociopaths? Like that's I'd like to think that isn't always the case.
Yeah.
That there's a happy medium there.
Totally. Something I also wanted to ask you, because I was actually not sure if you're going to start your own podcast, but you just told me you do. So some interesting question I have for you, like let's say like your first 3 podcast episodes, you can have on whoever you want, dead or alive, like the first 3 episodes. Who would it be and why?
Well, I mean, my buddy Nietzsche, I would that would obviously, and to find out if he would hate me or like me, because you never really know. But
kind of funny,
yeah. Who knows? I mean, and it could just be different times and so forth. But I definitely have a lot in common with that guy, and I guess another person I have a lot in common with in a way is Yukio Mishima. The author, the Japanese author. I think that we have a lot of intersects in our life, a lot of intersections.
What kind of books did he write? The last author you mentioned, sorry?
Yukio Mishima?
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a lot of books, actually a huge number of books and plays and poems and all kinds of things. But what he's known for, I think, in the circles that we're talking about is he wrote a book called Sun and Steel. Mm-hmm. Basically, and it was in the 50s, I think 50s or 60s, where he, he went through World War II and everything like that, in Japan, getting kind of its ass kicked, and then coming back and so forth, and rebuilding the economy and so forth. And, he comes from an old samurai family, and, I think he missed his opportunity to die gloriously, and that kind of messed him up for his whole life. But, so he took up bodybuilding, and he, before, almost no one was doing that in the 50s, the 50s and 60s, almost no one was bodybuilding, but he took up bodybuilding, and so there's all these pictures of Yukio Mishima. He was just kind of a sensitive author, who was a famous author already. And then he's like, no, I'm going to be a bodybuilder now.
Yeah.
So then he took up kendo and he became like a fourth dan kendo master. And then he went a little, I won't say he went crazy because I think that's not accurate. But he was still really in love with this idea of old Japan and bringing back old Japan. And he was maybe too in love with the idea of dying heroically and so forth. And he actually took the general of their army hostage, him and his friends. He had a bunch of his kind of followers and fans and stuff where they formed a paramilitary organization. And they took his, this general of their Japanese defense force. They stormed their office with samurai swords. They didn't have guns, just samurai swords. They held off all these other guys, and then he went out on a balcony and gave a speech to all the soldiers about how they should, bring Japan's greatness back and so forth. And then he went inside and cut his stomach open like samurai style, and then had somebody cut his head off. So he's like one of the last people who ever did that, like, because that was something that samurai did back in that, in the time where samurai were, a regular thing. If you felt like you'd been dishonored or you're doing something in protest, the best thing that you could do is just kill yourself in front of everyone. And then this is my final gesture. It's almost like a fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, this is my final gesture. I disagree. This is the best way that I can show you that I'm serious.
Damn.
And so, pretty impressive. I mean, I think he wanted to do that for his whole life, but impressive figure. I mean, he definitely be someone who I'd want to talk to. I mean, he was incredibly intelligent, incredibly literate, and so forth. But he's an interesting guy. And then, as far as the rest, I mean, I guess I have a lot of people who I can have on now. So I'm looking forward to having some MMA people and some. I booked my friend Tanner. He's a style guide, and there'll just be a lot of people. I think over the next few years that I get to have on. Yeah,
I'm definitely going to check it out.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about it. I think it'll be good because it's a different. My stuff last time I did a podcast was a little more. It wasn't political, but like some of the episodes had more political figures on and stuff like that. And I just don't want anything to do with that anymore. I don't have time for it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really help anything. And that's kind of why I have the sun behind me. My new slogan is "Stay Solar," and that's the book that I'm working on right now. Thinking about the idea of the sun as the imagery that you want to be, kind of this eternal father that brings light and truth and has gravity, and everything orbits around that guy.
Yeah,
you want to be that kind of father figure in the sky. I mean, it goes back to old Proto-Indo-European ideas, and that's why this is actually a Bronze Age symbol. I think it was actually found in Zurich, by the way.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I think because I found it on in a book of sun symbols, so forth, and I think this was actually found in Zurich. But so it's a Bronze Age sun symbol, and I've had it redone in neon. So because I also think that people need to live in the present. Like we need to live in the present, not like wish we were back in the past for forever, because we don't know what the past was like.
Yeah.
So I try to bring ancient ideas into the present.
I love it. Yeah, love it. I'm also reading into like Joseph Campbell's work, Carl Jung, talking about it. It's amazing, man.
Yeah, all that stuff. I mean, that's why I was reading Jung, and that's why I was reading enough of him that I had some arguments with him. But Campbell and all these ideas of old archetypes and all this symbolism that never really goes away.
Yeah,
and masculinity is one of those things. It's one of the masculine is an eternal thing. The masculine energy or whatever. I mean, that is an eternal thing. The strength, courage, mastery. And I mean, men have always been thought to be more manly if they were strong throughout all of human history, everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're in India or, China or whatever, that man was manlier if he was strong.
Yeah.
It's an eternal thing.
Yeah.
And the idea also that the men are associated with the sky and light and so forth, and women are kind of associated with the earth mean, these are all like ideas that are the same everywhere.
Yeah.
You know.
I love all these ideas, man. I don't really know, because I really don't want to talk too much about your books, because I want my followers to really like dig into your books, especially guys out there, because I feel like, man, every one of my, not my friends, but I feel like a lot of guys these days, I feel like they think they're too cool, to read about that stuff. I mean, also back in the days, I was like, why should I read about masculinity? I feel like men be like the macho guy, but it's
Well,
actually not what masculinity means. Yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, I have two kinds of guys. I think, well, maybe three, but two main kinds of guys that end up reading my book, and it kind of shows how effective it's been in many ways. I get guys who were more like me, and I always say that nerds who realize that they need to get punched in the face are my people. Like
Really?
I went to art school. I very middle class, normal upbringing, and so forth, and like the guys who were like that, but then realize that something's missing in their life a little bit.
Yep.
Those guys are my people. I understand that. That's who they are. But there's another group of guys who kind of validate everything that I write about. And those are guys who have done a lot of military service or law enforcement. I have 1%er biker gangs. They like to be called biker clubs. Could get them in trouble, I think. But 1%ers. I have special forces of from all different nations and so forth. I don't get into the different designations because there's so many. But all kinds of elite military people who have been in situations where they've been in combat and some pretty big names in martial arts and so forth. They read my book too.
Yep.
And what they say is that this is what I've always thought for the most part, but I just put it into words for them, but they already were living that. And so that's really great for me because I'm right. They were already living it. And so it was good for them to be able to put it into a more concise form. Because a lot of guys, they know what masculinity is, and we all know what it is. I mean, if a guy across the room is more or less masculine, just instinctively, right?
Yeah.
You don't need a graph to figure that out, But
the algorithm.
you don't need the algorithm. That'd be funny if Instagram had like an algorithm for masculinity. But it's you don't need that to figure that out. We already have the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
It's already part of us, and we have that. But if men are asked to explain what masculinity is, they don't know how to explain the algorithm.
Yep.
They don't know how to explain it. And so they get in a lot of trouble. I mean, when, they get in arguments with women that they can't get out of, or get in arguments with, feminist men or men who hate being men, because there are men who hate being men.
Yep.
Or they want to change men to be more like them, because they're angry at men. And it's all kind of daddy issues stuff. But there's so many guys who they know what masculinity is, but they can't describe it. And I think that's where the Way of Men is really helpful. So it's like, even if it doesn't mean that you're not a man if you read the book. In many cases, some men who are way manlier than I will ever be have read the book. And it's useful for them because then they can go back and articulate exactly what they mean, rather than just saying, I know what it is, but I can't quite describe it.
Yeah. Yeah, what helped me a lot is after my travels, that feeling of being grounded. Like if I would need to pinpoint it to something, I realized that having the feeling that everything will be fine at the end of the day, and you can actually handle everything that comes to your way. And then even if you need to die at the end, that you will be fine. Like that kind of would be my sentence.
Yeah. A lot of guys, very much in the solar area of things that have been going. I think a lot of men right now are attracted to Stoicism.
Oh yeah.
And that seems to be almost what you were describing.
Have them
really.
here.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. That's what a lot of men have been attracted to that. And Stoicism can go a little too far because if you aren't affected by anything, are you really alive anyway? Like I don't care about anything. Everything that happens is fine. I don't know. Like that's maybe too far, but it does give you some good tools to think about, like to really determine what matters in your life and to think like, yeah, okay, something bad can happen, but most of the problem is my response to it.
Yeah.
And that's what Stoicism, I think, teaches a lot of people. And I think that's why it's become so popular and so useful recently. Especially, I think it's popular, especially now because we're all surrounded by so much hysteria. In the media and so forth, everything's the new, oh my God, this is crazy. What's going to happen now? We hear about disasters that our whole human existence, if something happened 3,000 miles away, we would never hear about it.
Yeah.
But we hear about everything now. There's an earthquake on the other side of the world. This guy shot a whole bunch of people over here. Those things aren't close to us. They didn't happen near us. They didn't affect us, but they affect us psychologically because we're hearing all this stuff.
Yeah.
Which is why, I really don't even watch the news anymore because I don't need that in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I want to deal with things, problems that are actually in my life rather than the problems that are other people's problems.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Stoicism has become kind of an antidote. It's like the anti-Twitter.
Oh yeah.
It's like Twitter is the number one, I would think, expression of modern hysteria.
Yeah.
Everybody's just bitching at each other back and forth, and it's worth people within a day they're all upset about something that has nothing to do with them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Stoicism is very much, I think, the anti-Twitter.
Yeah. So basically, I guess you said it. I was listening to your other podcast you did, like with the Art of Manliness before, and I guess you were also talking about like how you don't worry about stuff anymore that is not in your control.
Yeah, I think that's always good to think about it that way. Yeah. You can't stuff that you can't change. Like that's why I said I don't want to really deal with politics that much anymore because politics it's going to happen without me.
Yeah.
Whatever's going to happen is going to happen without me, and I really have very little influence on it.
Yeah.
So why get mad about it? People get so mad every day. Jeez, can you believe what happened on the news?
Yeah.
That's not your life, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because like this year also I kind of realized I still had a little bit of a victim mindset in some areas of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going so far right now where I say it's actually also my responsibility even when I'm thinking, and when I'm putting my focus on. I can always put my focus on the problem or on the solution where focus goes, like emotions go basically. So I feel like, as you said, it's not the purpose of not feeling anything. Like if I wouldn't be excited before this podcast, it would be weird because I'm reading your books. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to talk to like Jack Donovan, whatever, this would be weird.
Yeah.
So I was excited, but I guess it's my responsibility to be able to change that emotion in a productive way if I want to, but it's not the purpose of not feeling anything at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's also funny you mentioned like the author that killed himself because I guess Seneca did the same at the end of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the day, they used to do that a lot.
Yeah. Right.
Rulers went out in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
I actually got the tattoo, which is actually a quote from Caesar, but the "Et tu, Bruta," whatever that Caesar was supposed to have said while they were stabbing him.
What does it mean? I actually don't know.
Huh?
What does it mean?
"Et tu, Bruta"? It means he didn't actually say that. I think he said something in Greek, but it was similar. It means like "and you, Brutus," because it was. Yeah, basically all the people who I've trusted and mentored and so forth around me are now stabbing me to death.
Oh, yeah.
And,
right.
I had a situation like that happen in my life where I had mentored somebody and they really put it to me. And so that's when I got that tattoo.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I'm just curious, what's one of your favorite books you've ever read or favorite quote or something like that? I'm always curious.
Oh, favorite books. I'm always in whatever I'm into right now.
Yeah.
There's things that stick with you over life. Actually, I'm just going to pull random stuff out because I'm old. So it's been a long time, right? The book Sexual Personae by Camille Paglia, which is probably the only female book I would ever cite. But that was probably pretty influential on my work. Obviously, I like most of Nietzsche's books.
Yep.
Zarathustra, which is the hardest word to say on a podcast ever.
But it's even here, I can show, right? What's it?
Yeah. Also
even,
sprach Zarathustra.
Yeah, in German, it's super weird,
Yeah.
man. It sounds super angry.
Oh, really?
I mean,
That's interesting.
I mean, German
sounds more angry.
Like German is an angry language. Yeah, it sounds really angry when people speak German.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always thought it would sound more angry, but then when I visited Germany, I was surprised because it didn't sound that way at all. Yeah, especially flight attendants. Flight attendants speaking German is a whole different. It's like all soft and buttery German. It's very different. But yeah, I mean, when I try to speak German, it sounds very angry. Definitely.
But I like your speeches, by the way. I like how the way you speak. It fits your book, so it's actually good.
Yeah. Thank you. It's intentional. I mean, obviously, I can't talk that way all the time because if I talk like Jack Donovan all the time, it would be very strange.
Yeah.
It's that's not normal. Yeah. But I do think that as an author or anyone who's really talking about any subject, you want to embody that message.
Yeah,
I think that that's really important to embody that message and communicate it properly, because if you're just a guy, you're sitting around in sweatpants and you're dirty and whatever, you're fat and you're sitting in front of your television and you're like, well, here's what I think about masculinity. I mean, who's going to listen to you?
Yeah,
who's going to care? I mean, that's why, it's been good for me to be an author who writes about masculinity, because I have to be judged all the time by everyone.
Yeah.
Like people are always going to be judging me as the guy who brings that message.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's things that I would do, but I'm like, well, I can't do that because I'm Jack Donovan. Like, well, I guess I gotta do this. I mean, it is funny also, as a writer, you write about things a lot of times, messages that you need to hear. And I think that's why some of my work has been popular, because there's a lot of essays that I've written, like, life is conflict, peace is death. Yeah. There's a lot of things. I mean, I've said that to myself right before like sparring matches, because I'm like, well, Jack Donovan, life is conflict, peace is death, because you don't want to do it, but you're making yourself do it.
Yeah.
And, and it's stuff that I need to hear to motivate me in the direction that I need. And other men need that same kind of motivation. So if I'm honest in the way that I'm saying what I need to hear, I think it's coming across, effectively for them.
Totally. But, I can hear it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So my last question, which is actually pretty intense, I would like to ask you this, is like, I'm really into, like in my mid-20s, I started to think about dying, because I realized, okay, I'm not going to live forever. Perhaps not the best thing to do, but for me, it helps. I'm a big fan of Stoicism. So I ask myself this often, like, what would be your message? Like, if you would know you would die soon, you could just leave like one message, your main message, like what would be your personal message to the world, especially young guys out there? Your life's message. I know it's pretty intense, but it's pretty interesting.
Well, I mean, the cool thing about my life is that I feel like I've already done that. Mm-hmm. I mean, if the way of men is around when I'm dead, I did something right. It should be, because I think it's in libraries and all around the world.
Yeah.
But I mean, so that personally, that's my message. And it's not a little bullet point that I can give you, but the idea that masculinity is important and beneficial, and that we're losing something beautiful in the world.
Yeah.
Something good and beautiful. I think that's what a lot of my work has been about. And that's kind of what I leave to posterity.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about being an author, is that's what I leave.
Yeah.
That's my kid, really.
Yeah. Beautiful. Love it. Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for taking the time. For me, it was a pleasure. And awesome. I know you're coming to Switzerland this summer. You said first to Zurich and then to the Nietzsche house, right?
Yeah. I'm hoping to. I'm going to go down to Sils Maria and spend a few days at some point. But I will be coming and leaving to Zurich, because afterward, that's where I have to fly into. So I'm going to try and spend a couple days in Zurich on either side.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'll be coming out there this summer.
Awesome. Because I'm the type of guy, when I like people or like their books, I always love to meet them in real life.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm thinking, like, in case, I don't know if you really like Carl Jung, but it's kind of funny because I was thinking like me going to the Carl Jung museum like once, but I had no idea when. So if I know when you're here, I probably
Yeah.
the Carl Jung museum in Zurich if you want to.
No, that'd be cool. I mean, yeah, I would be super interested. Obviously, he's a really interesting figure, and as much as like I said, I gave a speech, kind of saying some things I didn't like about Jung, but I could also quote Jung all day long with cool stuff that he said. Stuff that I think was right. So he was right about a lot of things. I just think he was wrong about a few, or maybe just not helpful about a few. But he actually helped me out a lot last year. But no, that'd be cool. Yeah, if we can make it work when I come to Zurich, I'd love to meet up and do that. I love to travel around the world and get to meet people who've read my work and so forth. It's awesome.
Yeah, you get so much more back. I feel like when you like write books or have podcasts. Like for me, the same. You get so much stuff back.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Just at the end, I'm curious. Like, have you done the Myers-Briggs personality test by coincidence?
Yeah, a long time ago. I'm gonna throw out INTJ.
INTJ?
I was maybe
thinking, okay. I was thinking INFJ or INFP, but I like to type people sometimes. It's interesting.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a really long time, but I think I'm guessing INTJ, but I might be wrong.
Okay, I was thinking INFP or INFJ because you're into art and stuff,
Yeah,
history.
Could absolutely.
Be. Yeah. But yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Where can people find your work if they want to follow you?
Well, I'm an Instagram guy, so my Instagram is @starttheworld, and that's my main source. But I also have a website, jack-donovan.com.
Awesome. Do you have any recommendation for me to have on next?
No, I'd have to watch more episodes of your podcast to see who would be appropriate. But
okay.
Yeah,
I'm just really into like masculinity is a good topic, but around like any topic that could interest, especially like young men.
Yeah. I mean, if you can get them on, it just any of the speakers that I just spoke with at the 21 convention were all pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of guys actually right now talking about masculinity. When I first started writing The Way of Men, there weren't many.
Yeah.
And now there's a lot of guys out there talking about these things. So
yeah, I love it. Like your influence is amazing. Like I guess in a couple of years there will be like 10 times more of us that will talk about that, I hope.
Oh, totally.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everyone listening.
Cool.
I will see you next time.
Cheers.